Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here in Washington, D.C. at AUVSI's Washington conference to talk to Helen Greiner, who is a highly qualified expert in the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Acquisition Technology, Acquisition Logistics and Technology. And I should note for our audience that you're a distinguished graduate from MIT and also one of the founders of iRobot, which, I was talking to somebody, a friend of mine in the Army, who said that she said it was the most game-changing technology she's ever acquired. So you've got that going for you.
Well, thank you.
So you gave a great talk here about autonomy and how to think about autonomy, and obviously the Army, and you advise on autonomy and artificial intelligence at the Army. What's the right way for the service to think about autonomy? And what it is and it isn't, because I think that folks have this tendency of thinking that it's a panacea, whereas it's good at some things, it's not good at others. And I want to sort of set that as the predicate to then talk about, we have a tendency of using autonomy and autonomous systems to do stuff we already do, as opposed to maybe reimagining missions. So talk to us about the first thing about how should we think about autonomy?
I like to think of autonomy as autonomy for a particular mission. So you don't just say autonomy, because it actually means absolutely nothing. But you could be autonomous for a cave clearing mission, or you could do a reconnaissance mission autonomously, or you could do a fire mission. But you really want to think about what is the actual mission and what you're trying to accomplish, which plays into the next part of your question, because the systems that we create don't have to be how the standard operating procedure with humans accomplishes them today. They can be completely different, kind of like the Roomba, right? It doesn't do vacuuming the way a human does it, but it has some benefits, right? It goes every day, so your floor is always clean. It goes right under the beds, right under the couches, and so it's a different way to do clean that's designed specifically for the job. It's the same thing for military missions. Going into a cave, you might not do it exactly the way a human did it, but you could potentially get to more different places, get a different perspective with a small ground robot or a drone.
That's right, and we were talking earlier about it, that the Roomba might miss a crumb, but your room is actually much cleaner than you OCDing and going and picking up that extra crumb that you may find irritating. What do you think are the keys to, right, because we heard from a military leader today, General Eric Smith, Lieutenant General, the head of the Marine Combat Development Command, and one thing he joked was that he's a digital immigrant, and that it will be a little bit of an intellectual leap to trust, for example, fully autonomous cars. But there are actually a lot of people who look at fully autonomous driving as actually something much safer, because the fully autonomous car won't be distracted. A fully autonomous car is not going to have a drink on the way home and then screw something up or miss a light or be somehow distracted, right? What's the right way for folks to be thinking about some of these missions and how to execute them so that the requirements are actually, it will allow you to think about different kinds of problems that have to be solved, right? I mean, so what are some ways to think about that nexus of where the technology is going to take you and how you kind of rethink fundamentally the missions that you're performing?
I think it's focus on the mission and not just try to duplicate how we do them today. And now we have, in the Army, we have Futures Command that is thinking about how we fight and how we can bring, as part of their job, is how we can bring the autonomous assets to bear to give us that overmatch.
Do you think when you would, there is a large focus, obviously, on great power competition between the United States, China, and Russia. And we've heard quite a lot about China. Ellen Lord, the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, talked a little bit about, the creation of a trusted marketplace, for example, to get American investment going into the American unmanned systems industry, for example. What do you think are the keys to making, because you would look at autonomy and say that both in autonomy and artificial intelligence were things where the United States has led for a very long time. You helped found a company that was the first application of some of this technology in a commercial marketplace, and then did the scuba, which I thought was very good when we visited your guys' factory a long, long time ago. What does the nation need to do if the United States is to maintain this excellence and advantage at a time when it's China actually that's popularizing some of this technology and actually economically capitalizing on it to the point where even the US military is using, for example, Digi products?
Well, the U.S. military is no longer using DJI Chinese-made drones.
Well, subject to waiver, right? I mean, Ellen Lloyd said that there are some folks who can get waivers.
Well, there's some very innovative companies in this country that are building the next generation of drones. We have a program in the Army called SRR, Short Range Recon, that is now has 5 of these entities under contract to provide the next generation of small, soldier deployed drone. And we've also been talking about what we can do in the Pentagon on a national level to really stimulate the drone industry. And I believe, personally, it's going to take innovation, and I believe the innovation can and will come in the United States, because with those innovations, it's going to be able to leap ahead in the marketplace rather than just try to play catch up and copy what is already commercially available from China.
What do you think are the keys to getting those innovative cycles fast, right? Because I mean, you could argue that some of the systems, iRobot was the developer of the PackBot, for example, which is still the most, I think, populous robot in the US military arsenal. What are the keys to getting that fast cycle innovation that everybody is talking about, whereas you come from industry and had to actually do that, right? So what's the key if, as a highly expert advisor, coming into the government?
I believe that there's a lot of innovators in this country, and what leaders need to do is to listen, choose, and promote the ones that are really good, that are going to make a difference in the fight. And I believe those companies and those people do exist, and being able to support them and to really get more innovation into the mix with small contracts for innovation, rapid equipping, experimentation, and really doing quick design cycles so we can continually leap further ahead. And there's many different areas where this is important. In I see a renaissance in the airspace of different physical airframes now, and in sensors, because of what's going on in the automotive industry. There's lots of different types of sensors and lots of different funding behind sensors. In the computational arena, there's so much push into next generation of digital platforms that I think the innovation is happening here. The Defense Department supports it, but it's really the commercial industry that makes it into, gets it to the next level.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of people who were saying, for example, that instead of the DoD working autonomy, DoD should set lofty goals, for example, like DARPA Grand Challenge, right? But that actually it's going to be the commercial automotive industry that will advance the technology that then the military can kind of piggyback off of. How long?
I think the DoD comes in on both sides. The DoD has always funded and promoted the innovation, and I believe it's going to continue to do that, especially in the robotic and automation AI space. Then some of it goes out to commercial industry. The stuff that has a shorter timeline can go right into rapid equipping. But then on the back end, when we decide on what needs to happen, then the larger programs to build the systems and get them deployed from ASOL, which is where I work, the Acquisition Command.
How long? But if you look at it, whether it's General Motors or Ford or Mercedes or any of these companies, they're interested in, or Tesla for that matter. All of them are actually drawing technology off of a global technology industrial base. Doesn't that present kind of a challenge for DoD if DoD is trying to safeguard itself from dependence on, for example, Chinese subsystems or Chinese imagery tubes or cameras or sensors? At the end of the day, how do you maintain the national advantage piece of this, given the technology is increasingly global?
Right. Well, it depends what the component is, right? If the component purely a mechanical system, I don't see a reason why we can't use it, especially in the shorter time frame. So I think we do get to use the entire worldwide marketplace. Plus, there is competition. It might be a little more expensive sometimes, but there is competition all over the world. There's manufacturing components, Europe, other places as well, including this country, South America. So there really is a global supply chain right now, and we do go beyond our borders for component technologies, and rightly so. But what I love to see is the innovation happening in the United States, because that's going to drive the next generation of marketplace. And I still see that happening, and I think it's going to continue to happen, and the DoD is going to continue to play a really large role in supporting it.
Do you, let me ask you a technological question, right? Earlier you had mentioned the key to actually paving the way for autonomy, even if the Army doesn't decide what to do, is to look at what are the predicates that every single vehicle or system that goes into the United States Army going forward has to have to be able to optionally unman in the future, because everybody always wants to talk about optionally manned, right? What are the keys that every single system should have to allow that to happen in the future?
So I think when you're optionally manned, there might be some use cases where it needs to happen that way, but I'm more of a fan of the autonomous system, because then you get the freedom of not having to design around the human organic body. So you get more freedom in the design space. But also, to get anything pushed through, you really need to, focus, and a focus on autonomy is what I would like to see. But autonomy defined by a particular mission set, right? We want to make something that does this mission. Can we do it with robotic technology?
But isn't there, when you were saying about power and throttle and steering and
Yeah. So at a very minimum, the underlying mechanical systems have to be digitally controlled, like drive-by-wire, fly-by-wire, steer-by-wire, throttle-by-wire, turret-by-wire. And I would like to see the next generation of systems for the military all incorporate that, so they can be built into robots later. Going back and doing the redesign, you end up with hacked systems, and you also end up with very expensive systems.
You were an absolute pioneer in the technology. You, a Hungarian family, emigrated to UK. From the UK, came to the United States. Talk to us a little bit about what inspired you, and whether or not all of the robotic competitions and drone camps and everything are actually what's going to set up the next generation to be even more innovative and successful than your generation or our generation.
I think I am a digital native because I was programming when I was 10 or 11. I saw Star Wars, and I was inspired by R2-D2. R2-D2, he was a character, he had emotions, he had a personality, and he was really more than a machine. And I've been inspired to build things that are more than machines. And I think we got a little there, with the PackBots. I've been credited with saving the lives of hundreds of soldiers and thousands of civilians when I was with iRobot. But also the Roomba, right? It's a motive, it's got the bleeps and bloops, and it might not save the universe, but it can save you a lot of cleaning.
But do you think that this new generation, do you think that? Look, I mean, it's a little bit like soccer, right? Everybody plays soccer, but you would think that soccer in the United States would be a lot more popular. So the fact that you have a lot of drone camp people and a lot of robotics club people does not necessarily translate that they'll all become engineers at the end of the day. We can only hope, but that's not the case, because there are some people in my family who are good at robotics club who didn't become engineers. So what do you think we need to do from sort of a national perspective to encourage and to get people into some of these hard sciences where, for nationalistic reasons or a whole variety of societal reasons, other countries find it a little bit easier to generate, for example, engineers, whereas we tend to not be as good? What's the right way to think about that problem?
Well, soccer is extremely popular in the United States. In fact, we are world champions.
Boom. Okay, good point.
But I think the drone camps, the first competition, all these robot contests, I think it does inspire people. I can't tell you the number of engineers I've hired who have come from a background having done first, and first got inspired to go into engineering by those contests. And now I see drones, hacking, inventor kits for children. There's so many things that are encouraging engineering, and we do have to stop the negative forces, because it's important for the whole country that to be in the lead in technology and maintain that leadership position from an economic and a security standpoint.
And so you're a Star Wars person, not a Star Trek person.
I am a Star Wars person, yes.
No further questions. Helen, thanks very, very much. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and very cool necklace, by the way.
Thanks so much.